This is amazing. Okay. This is amazing. You're all ready. And yes, it's exactly 7 o'clock. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Silverton Hall and the Village of Silverton All Candidates Meeting. My name is Gary Wright. I'll be your moderator tonight until Jan McMurray throws me out for doing something wrong. I'd like to say, first of all, of course, welcome. And I'm really happy that the Valley Voice and the Chamber of Commerce have co-sponsored yet another candidates meeting. I'm also really happy that so many of you could make it tonight. So that's just wonderful. Our intent here is, of course, to listen to the candidates and get to ask them questions. There will be questions from the floor. There have been questions that have been sent into the Valley Voice so that we make sure that people who can't be here also get their questions aired in public. So we'll be going back and forth, okay, with those questions. I'll show you how that will all work here a little bit later. The main thing, of course, for us is to meet the candidates. As I mentioned in New Denver and Spokane a couple of days ago while we were doing these, that this kind of meeting is a little different than a public meeting. We're all used to, I think, going to public meetings where council is seeking our input on something and they want to hear from us. This is a meeting where we actually want to hear the candidates for council because we're making up our minds who to vote for. In a sense, tonight, all of you here that are able to vote in the Village of Silverton are like the hiring committee. This is an interview, and these are the people looking for the job. These are folks I know from experience who are crazy enough to volunteer for a job that is so low paying that the staff all makes more than they do, and yet they run $1 million a year business, and they do it without benefits and for very little money, and put in a lot of hard hours doing it, and they all want to do it. And that's I think something that's wonderful about small communities and bigger ones. That interest in government is just amazing. So as you ask questions of your candidates here tonight, remember they would all like the job. They're certainly all worthy of it. There's not enough seats for everybody, so not everybody can get elected. But as the hiring committee, I would say just treat this as an interview. Ask the questions and listen to the answer. If you like it, fine, you will vote for them. And if you don't, like a hiring person, you just thank them for coming and tell them that you will call them back later. Okay, that's probably the best way to do it. Having said that, the village is not having a full election because you've already had an election for mayor. As you know, returned by acclamation is His Worship Colin Ferguson, who's with us here tonight. Colin, and he's kindly agreed to stay here as a resource if anyone has a question of him. You said, Your Worship, that you'd be happy to do your best to answer them, but he's not taking part in the debate. Otherwise, he also is going to be listening to the candidates. All right. So feel free to ask him a question if you want, but otherwise, he also is here to hear everyone. Having said that, I want to say we're also doing a kind of a hybrid Zoom meeting tonight because at one time we weren't sure Brian Mills here could make it. Luce Paquin is on an airplane somewhere and is out of touch even through Zoom. She sent a message to us that says, my apologies for not being present at this evening's all candidate meeting, but I am at this very moment sitting in an airplane on my way to deal with some family affairs. Regards to all. So what I would like to do, candidates, is during the early part of the meeting where you introduce yourselves, and we'll have 2 minutes to let people know kind of what your priorities might be and what you have to say. I will read what's probably a little less than a 2-minute statement from Luce that was in the Valley Voice. Is that okay with everybody if I do that? Yeah, okay, thank you. Let's see, Arlene Yofonoff also cannot be here in person, but she is here, okay, via, is it, yeah, she can see us. She's on Zoom. We can't get a picture of her because she isn't set up for that, but she can hear us and we'll be able to hear her. So please remind me to call on her also to give her answers, okay, and give her statements. When we started this, I guess what I'd like to do first of all is just as I introduce the candidates, I think probably you know everyone, but just in case you don't, I'm going to call on all the candidates, and as I name them, they could stand up and hold your applause until okay they've all risen. If I could, and I'll go this way after his worship. Okay, your candidate for council, Clarence Denbok, and for council, Leah Main, for council, Brian Mills, for council, Margaret Scaia. Okay, and also for council, Arlene Yofonoff and Luce Paquin. Okay, give them all a hand. Yeah, thank you. There's a reminder of who's here. Okay, the format for tonight will be to give each of our candidates who has actually a really nice sound system. Thanks to Jay Clark and his sound system for getting us in. That's Three Birds Studio, Jay, Robin, and Rand. Let me guess how that you got that name. Okay. Anyhow, each candidate will have 2 minutes for introductory remarks, at which point we have 3 questions that were sent in, and we'll go through those and get the candidates' responses, and then we'll open up everything to questions from the floor. All right, that's kind of the general format, and we'll close with the candidates getting 3 minutes to give their final summation and answer any questions that they didn't get to or they felt should have been covered earlier. So we're going to be out of here by 9 o'clock. That's the plan. If there's a riot, we will leave earlier. So with that, what I'd like to do is, if I could, for the 2 minutes, we'll start at the far end just for fun with the people who are here, and we'll work our way down the table this way. Okay. So Margaret, you have the floor. Oh, I do have a stopwatch here. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to stand over here in the corner, and when you have 30 seconds left, I'll hold up my hand to signal it's kind of time to wind it up. All right.
I just want to thank everybody for being here this evening, and for those people that organized this event, and also Mayor Ferguson and all of my fellow candidates for the councillor. I was on my way around doing a door-to-door the last couple of weeks. Then I crutching around on my aircast and my crutches, and then I had a bit of a setback, so I didn't get to see everybody. But thank you to those who I did get to speak to door to door. It was a really good experience. I live in Silverton, and I live in my great aunt and uncle's house on Alpha Street. My husband and I bought the house from the Wells family, who had owned it since my Aunt Myrtle died. Sorry. Prior to being a nurse, I had a business making outdoor equipment, but like many others in the manufacturing and resource sector in the early 1990s, I had to leave the Valley to find work and to change careers. I registered for the nursing program at Selkirk College and moved to Nelson. I graduated from that program in 1997 and began my career in nursing. I retired from my position of professor of nursing at the University of Victoria in June of this year, after bouncing back and forth from Victoria over the past 6 years. Although I don't have direct experience in politics at the municipal level, I'm on the board of 3 local and national historical associations, including the Silvery Slocan Historical Society, and have represented healthcare and education at many organizational levels. I also have a strong administrative background, most recently as director of undergraduate nursing programs at UVic. As a member of the Canadian Nursing Association, I'm aware of important issues facing Canadian healthcare today, including rural healthcare. I believe I bring valuable knowledge and skills to the community and a strong orientation and commitment to ensuring that Silverton remains a healthy and welcoming community for all. I hope you'll give me your vote on October 15th.
Thank you, Margaret. Okay, so that's how it's done, and hopefully that gets us all started as we go along. Yeah, the microphones, Jay, if you speakers can't quite hear yourself, just pull the mic a little bit closer as you go in. Jay will run the sound from there. Okay. Our next speaker is Brian Mills.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for being here. I was born in New Denver, raised in Silverton. I'm a Lutheran high school graduate. I'm a college graduate of criminology. After college, I moved back to the area, completed the RCMP auxiliary program, and was also a member of the Silverton Volunteer Fire Department and the New Denver Fire Rescue. In 1994, my father and I started an underground contract mining company. I co-own and operate Genex Mining and Silvertown Holdings, Inc. I've also worked for various logging contractors, local logging contractors. I ran for council in the last by-election, not to be a politician, but to be a strong voice for the community, to bring stability, move the village forward as residents wanted transparency, growth, and overall revitalization. In April, I spoke to many residents about their concerns, and I would like to let those residents know, I see a few of them here tonight, that I did bring those concerns to the council and staff in a written form, as I said I would. During my 6 months as your councillor, I was appointed Municipal Emergency Management Representative, RDCK, Slocan Lake and River Partnership Representative. I was involved in helping Councillor Yofonoff in bringing back the hanging baskets for our municipal buildings and businesses on Lake Avenue. Initiated a grant application through Columbia Basin Trust for a municipal hall upgrades, which we're waiting to hear back on. Started discussions on possible housing project. Involved in discussions on additional campground improvements and winter income potential. Started a discussion on a new civic building and public work structure. I'd like to stress all these projects I'm proposing are to be funded via grants, not tax increases. The biggest issue facing us is our healthcare and the facility, our hospital. I think as our council, existing council, our new council should work more closely with our neighboring villages to keep the hospital. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Thanks, Brian. And speaking next for council, Leah Main.
Thank you. Good evening. I acknowledge that we live, work, and play on the traditional ancestral unceded territory of the Sinixt people. Thank you to everyone who put their names forward to serve the community this way. And thank you to all of you who have come out tonight in person and online to have this forum. I'm currently the longest serving councillor, 13 years and counting, and I look forward to remaining on council for another term. COVID presented us as council and as a community with huge challenges, some of which, like supply chain issues, still linger. But now that the worst of it is in the past, it's time to look forward. I want to continue working with a team of folks dedicated to maintaining, sustaining, and improving our community. I want to continue working with our community groups and nonprofits. I look forward to rejuvenating Quartet, a series of regular meetings with Slocan, New Denver, and Area H to share resources and solutions to mutual challenges. I want to work in partnership with our close neighbors to make life better for all of us by sharing ideas and resources. I look forward to helping create regular forums for residents and council to exchange ideas and to have civil public conversations on matters that concern us all: housing and community development, maintaining and improving our amenities and infrastructure, supporting our businesses, and supporting young and growing families. I ask for your support, your vote on October 15th to serve another term on Silverton Council. Please vote.
Thank you, Leah. Thanks, Leah. And speaking your candidate for council, Clarence Denbok. Clarence?
Hello, everyone. Thanks for coming this evening. This is the first round of this sort of thing for me, and I'm looking forward to it, looking forward to the discussion. I've been on council now just over a year since the by-election that I was elected in along with Colin. It's been a privilege and a pleasure working with council here. Really enjoyable. It's been very interesting. There were some dynamics that were not easy for council, and it's been that way for years. A lot of people here may be aware of that. I think staffing issues and a lot of that sort of thing has been resolved, and I think that's has a lot to do with the group that we have here now, really dedicated to well, just the qualities that I think I also bring to council. And those are integrity and honesty and a collaborative approach, being persistent but not pushy, respecting process is super, super important to me. And I think there were some issues with that before. And this council has been amazing with that. I hope the council that's coming up is as well, that we work hard at representing the issues. We vote and we respect the outcome. No grudges, no pushiness, just do our homework and represent all of you well and vote and carry on. And that also has a lot to do with learning to trust each other on council. That's been amazing. Without that trust, you know, you need a culture of trust in the organization, which flows through to staff as well. And from the CAO down to the rest of the staff, if it's a miserable environment here in council, that's going to carry on into the office and to the rest of staff. I think those interpersonal dynamics are super, super important. And I think that's one of the things that I work hardest at in council and enjoy the most, actually. Yeah, so I hope you will vote for me. I'd love to serve again a term here and wish everyone the best.
Thank you, Clarence. Yes. Okay, now coming by Zoom is Arlene Yofonoff. Arlene, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Thank you very much. I'm not on Zoom. I'm actually on a phone connection. I'm sorry I can't attend the meeting tonight, but I am working at the school in New Denver. I have been born in New Denver and raised in Silverton by a hardworking family, and I have always worked hard for all of my life, and I enjoy working for the village of Silverton to do its best. This summer we had the gallery with all the music festival. It was wonderful seeing people together, being happy, working with our flowers to beautify our town, and the camaraderie we've had with a lot of people in our village. I would encourage everybody to come out and to our meetings. Let us know your feelings. If you have something you need to say, get it on our delegate for our agenda, and let us know what we need to do. It would be a bonus to have everybody in the community on the same page. And I hope you vote for me on October 15th. Thank you.
Thanks, Arlene. Everybody's given me permission to read Luce Paquin's introduction. I will time myself here to 2 minutes. I'll read it. This comes from the Valley Voice for those of you who hadn't read this before. I've called Silverton home for 24 years now and like to think I can contribute in a constructive way to maintaining its particular quiet charm and easygoingness. A few years back, a council member suggested I run. I've given it some thought since then. So here goes. As a professional biologist and environmental manager on large-scale development projects, I am accustomed to dealing with all levels of governmental agencies. So I'm sure I can learn to handle the particular twists and turns of municipal governmental affairs. Good old common sense often does the trick, and I still have some of that left. I am a fan of small government, sticking to its business of providing fundamental services and allowing community members to pursue their wide range of interests and activities with as little interference as possible. Okay, so that was less than 2 minutes, but that's Luce Paquin. So those are your 6 candidates. and you've got good ones. I think you're really fortunate here with who's running for council. But I don't need to say that. I have a feeling the next speaker will, and that's the mayor of Silverton, Colin Ferguson. Your worship.
Yeah, hello everyone and welcome. Thanks for coming out tonight. Democracy only works when people show up. And this is not about me, it's about those guys. I already have the job. I should tell you up front, I actually wanted the job of the mayor of Coquitlam. I don't know if you noticed that he makes $160,000 a year. I thought I could do it by Zoom, but I'm really glad to have this one. This is going to be my second term. I only had a year the first term, so I felt it wouldn't be fair if I didn't get another crack at it. So I've got a few things I want to kind of say. I have notes to keep it really brief.
You don't have a timeline.
Because it's about, I know that, but it's about those guys. It's not about me. So, as you know, most of the world has come through a pretty rough time with COVID, and it's knocked lumps out of all of us, I think. In some obvious ways and some not so obvious ways too, as I think, Councillor Main alluded to. But, in addition to the pandemic, the village has had a little bit of a rough go with 2 by-elections in the past year, changes in staffing. 3 members of of council, myself included, perhaps especially me, had to hit the deck with our feet running. And we had to learn fast. But we did learn fast, and we managed to forge a working team. We managed to understand the issues facing the village and take on some important projects. And throughout all of that, we tried to place an emphasis on collaboration and respect. And I think we managed to do that. I've developed a great respect for the people I worked with over the past year. And then it's not over yet, folks. Through the summer months, we conducted a search for a new CEO, and we've managed to hire, we think, an outstanding candidate. So Viv Thoss brings experience, knowledge, enthusiasm, and a spirit of collaboration to the village administration. We're pretty confident she will manage the business of Silverton with competence and style into a future which we all know is going to be filled both with change and challenge. Viv is a breath of fresh air, and we are confident that our residents will find her as knowledgeable and as delightful as council has. Elections are times of renewal, either to renew trust in existing councils or to bring in fresh faces. And going forward, I am confident that the incoming council, working with administration, is going to be able to move Silverton in the right direction. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, now we move to the question portion of this, which is always lots of fun for those of us who are not up here in front going to answer them. I'll try and rotate how I call on people to answer the questions from one side to the other. People in the middle are probably going to get off easy. You'll be in the middle all the time because I can't remember more than 2 things. So that's how we'll do it. In the interest of openness, for sure, I'll give you the name of the person who asked the question for these 3 write-in questions, and show you the format which we asked them to use, and which we would ask you to use too, if you could, when you have your questions, which is you get to make some introductory remarks, but they should be very brief to set up the question so the candidates know what you're talking about. And you're free to be, of course, political. Try not to be libelous or slanderous, that. But keep it brief and get to the question so we give the candidates as much time as possible to answer them. You can ask your question to one candidate or all, or to the mayor if you would like, and we'll try and get to as many questions as we can. All right. To begin with, there is a question here from Tanya Gordon. It says, over the past decade, the councils of the past and staff have turned a blind eye to many of the current bylaws, like the unsightly premises bylaw and the garbage bylaw. In turn, our town is now dealing with increased bear activity and increased rat infestations, not to mention the skunks and raccoons that have moved in the last few years. My question is, she got a lot into one sentence there. My question is, if you're voted to the table, are you willing to enforce these bylaws and make our area clean, safe, and attractive again? And if not, what will you do to deal with these nuisance creatures that are taking over the town and impacting residents' food security throughout the year? And the person who gets to speak to that first here is with us via Zoom. Okay, Arlene Yofonoff. Arlene, did you hear the question?
Yes, I have. Well, excuse me, I have a cold. I have been aware that there has been rats around town as well as bears. I've also have lately seen some weasels, and they actually go after the rats and kill them. But it is up to the people to compost properly and to keep your food supply for bears indoors. Do not feed them, and just keep on setting your traps and trying to be aware of what you have outside.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for that. And I forgot to say, Arlene, thank you. Your timing was perfect. For these questions, if it's a question to everyone, the candidates, I would ask the candidates to try and reply in about a minute so we can get to as many questions as possible. Okay, and Arlene did that. Next, Clarence Denbok. Clarence?
Well, I tend to agree with Arlene that it's going to be everybody's responsibility to do their part, looking after garbage and trapping rats and killing stink bugs. I'm not sure that, of course, there are things the village can do. Garbage, we're working on, we're discussing new garbage disposal arrangements. I think we're all pretty excited about that. I'm not sure the cat's out of the bag yet on that one, but I imagine it'll be consultation with all of you about that too. But I think it's a fantastic idea. It's worked in other communities to keep bears away, and that would also presumably deal with some of the rat issues too. But yeah, it's a good question that we all face, I guess. It's good to keep that on our radar.
Okay, thank you very much. There's this tip in this at the end. If yeah, I promise not to interrupt people too much. Thanks, Leah Main.
Thank you. Thanks, Tanya, for the question. Garbage and wildlife do not necessarily have to go together. We have been working and will continue to work with WildSite on managing the attractants to the wildlife. There have been fewer rats in town this year as people get more strict about harvesting their fruits and protecting their gardens, and we will encourage that behavior. We are, as Clarence mentioned, looking at a new system of garbage collection, and we have already started providing large bear-proof bins in the village yard for people to deposit their between collection garbage at. There will be consultation with residents about the potential switch to a completely different system. In terms of enforcement of bylaws, we have very limited capacity to enforce bylaws unless you're willing to look at a double-digit tax increase. So we rely on education and peer pressure. Thank you.
Thanks, Brian Mills.
Well, I'd have to say being fourth in line is pretty cool. Because I am going to repeat what the other councillor said. We are looking at metal bear bins to handle the garbage. And truthfully, I don't know the wording of our bylaws with respect to what we can do about all the bears. I do feel uneasy that with the bear population in town, as I've got my daughter and granddaughter here walking around, and my parents, of course, and you all yourself. I am concerned about your safety with all the bears. I'm not sure what we can do about that other than keep our areas clean reduce the attractants for that. That's all I got.
Thank you, Margaret. Scaia.
Yes, thanks very much. Others have said the village is working on this issue, and I think that we're all aware of what the contributing factors are to the problem. Given the population of Silverton and the amount of funds available to hire bylaw enforcement person, I think that we have to lean first on responsibility of each individual to keep ourselves safe and to keep the community clean and healthy. I don't think that hiring more bylaw officers is necessarily going to solve the problem. I think public awareness and just taking that extra step to address the issues that contribute to that garbage situation, rats, pests, bears. I think that's really what we have to do in a small town like this.
Thank you. And Colin, your worship, you had some comments?
I volunteer here. The bear thing really isn't a complicated thing. Bears come where there's food. And there's no problem with bears until someone gets hurt. And usually not much happens until someone gets hurt. So if you want to get rid of the bears, you get rid of the food. I don't perceive that Silverton had a real garbage problem in terms of the bears. It's mainly fruit trees. So as long as you have fruit trees that are easily reachable by bears, you're going to have bears. So either you get rid of the fruit trees or you fence them with electric fences. And I'm not trying to oversimplify it, but I think really it's a pretty straightforward thing to deal with if you want to deal with it. And, I agree with Councillor Mills, you have kids running around and it's all fun and games until someone gets hurt. So it's much better to address this thing before a tragedy takes place. So one thing I would add is these things are all easily fixed with money. So it's not that council is dragging its feet on these things, but it costs money. We have talked about bear bins. That's the thing we will have to bring to the residents before we do anything. There has to be a discussion about it, but heads up, it's not cheap. Thanks.
Okay, and thank you. I have to mention here, just bringing the village to New Denver, where I live. Just this afternoon, I was up at a friend's house, and this is talking about bear problems. It's not only your fruit and gardens that attract bears. Apparently, red Hondas also attract bears. I drove up to his house, and there was 2 bears on top of his Honda, playing and tearing up his windshield wiper. So watch out for your windshield wipers also. Okay. The next question is from Johanna Yakachuk. In the 12 years since moving here and sending numerous email and having conversations with the village of Silverton, the RCMP, and the Department of Transportation and Infrastructure, none have led to a solution to the now over excessive speeding through our community. In each communication, one area put the responsibility on the other. Question is, how are you, as a representative of our community, going to advocate for the safety of our community, especially our children, and make this a priority? And Margaret, I'll start with you.
Yeah, thanks very much for that question. And obviously, speeding, safety, and tragedy are linked, and especially when it comes to cars coming through Silverton. When I was walking around talking to people, one person had a suggestion about speed bumps. And I think that from my observation of places that do have speed bumps, they absolutely slow down the traffic. The speed limit is 50 kilometers an hour. Some might argue that the big transport trucks can't slow down that fast, but maybe they should slow down that fast. And as with the bear situation, when somebody gets hurt, then maybe things happen, but we have the opportunity to work out other solutions. And from my knowledge of what could work, speed bumps or speed dips where they can still plow over top of them could be a possibility.
Thank you. Brian?
Yeah, that's a good question. I've noticed that myself, mainly with the transport trucks going through town too fast. Perhaps we could, you know, have a better communication with our local RCMP, see if they can enforce, be more of a presence on our highways so everybody knows they're there. Maybe move the 50-kilometer sign a little further outside of town so they got, you know, or slow down a little sooner. I know a couple residents mentioned to me while I was canvassing during the by-election, the traffic, the foot traffic that come up on either side of our bridge. You don't know somebody's there until they're there and it's too late. So I recommended, as well as them, maybe we should look at some kind of signage there, some blinking signs or what have you, some painted sidewalk to let motorists know that, you know, slow down by the bridge. You're coming up off the park, it's hard to see, and you're coming out where a transfer station was. It's really hard to see. Yeah, that's a good question though.
Okay, thank you. I know we're not giving people enough time to fully answer your questions, but hopefully they're giving an idea of what they're thinking about it, and we'll, you know, try and get back to it in their final remarks. Leah?
Thank you. Thank you, Joanna, for that question. The stark reality is that we do not own the highway. We have no jurisdiction over it as a village whatsoever. We cannot even put our village signs on the right of way without permission from Ministry of Transport and Infrastructure. But we might make some headway if we could convene a meeting, a face-to-face plus Zoom meeting of all of the involved agencies on the provincial and federal level, because there are multi-jurisdictional questions about it. We have been chipping away at this for years. They very graciously allowed us to put the speed sign at the north end of town, and we're trying to get one for the south end of town as well. But the only hope I see is if we can get all of the agencies at the table with support from village residents. Thanks.
Thanks, Leah. Clarence?
Yeah, it's a problem for sure. Everybody sees it. Even the RCMP whip through town at unbelievable speeds. And I've had conversations with them, and they seem to have been responsive to that about their own members speeding through town. They're certainly willing to talk with us. They seem to say the right things, but getting stuff done in the end may be a different story. I'm just very interested to hear Leah's take on this, because she's been around council long enough to have watched council try to deal with this issue over and over again. And I'm sure it's super frustrating, and all we can do is take another run at it. I think maybe it is time for a fresh start. And like Leah said, let's get some of those heads at the table and start pushing for that again. Let's take another run at that.
Can I volunteer very quickly? Just
Please, yeah, thanks, Clarence. Yeah, your worship.
They're actually having conversations with the RCMP very recently. I had a conversation with the local commander. They offered to try and increase police presence. They didn't say by how much, and I haven't actually noticed any. So we need to do more work on this.
Thank you. And Arlene?
Yes, I have noticed a few times the police have sat in Silverton and actually stood out on the road, and the traffic actually had slowed. More police presence, of course, would help, but with the Ministry of Highways, they are not going to put speed bumps on a highway, for one thing. Maybe if we had more, like the Camp Cafe has their little seating area out there, which has been okayed by the ministry. Some signs of just encroaching more to make the road look smaller, so they have to slow down. But I have noticed some police presence, and it did work.
Thank you very much for your answer here. I know everybody's concentrating hard on the phone feed here, so we can hear you, Arlene. Thank you for speaking clearly, though, because the sound is a little different in here. via telephone link. Do we
I'm
have?
sorry.
Oh, no, that's not your fault. No, that's okay. We just want to let you know what's going on. That's all. Okay. We have one last written question. Again, this comes from Tanya Gordon. I have shortened it. So Tanya, my apologies if I miss your point, but I think we've got it. The main thing is to get to the question. Tanya says, apart from Airbnbs, Silverton doesn't have proper accommodations for tourists and travelers. Last we heard the campground rebuild was going to take another 5 to 10 years to fully complete. Yet other projects are put on the books and done right away. This village currently has a lot of projects that have been on the books for a decade or more, like the sidewalks, and residents are not seeing these projects done in a timely manner. If you get elected to the table, will you push for our campground, a main source of revenue for the village, and other projects that are on the books to be completed in a more timely fashion instead of taking a decade or more to complete? Okay. Loaded question. It's absolutely fair. And we're going to start with Arlene going backwards this time. That's not you being backwards, Arlene. Okay, that talks about
all right.
the way we're seated here at the table.
I understand. Yes, our campground, it's a shame that what happened to it happened. I don't believe it should have been clear cut the way it was. It should have been done slowly, replace some trees, but not what happened. It's too bad, and it's going to take time to fix it. Concerning the rest of our projects that have not been completed, it seems like we don't have enough staff to do it or enough time on their part, but we need to work on getting more done, period.
Thank you. Clarence?
Well, we're definitely a tiny community, 200 and whatever it is, 12 people at the best of times. We're a tiny council. We're all amateurs and volunteers at this, except our amazing staff. I think that we have a council, and hopefully the council to come will be one similar to what we've had in the last year that I've been here with this group, that I've experienced this group. Super functional, moving forward, lots of enthusiasm. I don't think there's been I've only been around 14 years and haven't watched this council for that long, but I certainly know that it's been super dysfunctional. There's been staffing issues, a lot of energy spent on a lot of oxygen sucked up on stuff that didn't need to happen. And that's not happening now. We are so task focused. We're excited about the possibilities for Silverton. And we're super looking forward to working with Viv. And I think that's one of the reasons we chose her, is because she's full of vinegar and enthusiasm and raring to get to work with us. I think that's there couldn't be a better time for these things to get done than now. And if they don't happen, it's only because we don't have the resources, and whether that's manpower, person power, or dollars and cents, we'll do the best we can.
Thanks, Clarence. Leah?
There we go. Bright red light there. Thanks for that question, Tanya. As you're well aware from your time on council, government doesn't move quickly, but a timeline of 5 to 10 years on the campground redevelopment, I don't know where that rumor came from. That is way longer than the timeline we're looking at for accomplishing it. Doing any of these infrastructure projects takes money, lots and lots of money. Right now, Silverton is in a good financial position. We are debt-free. We have adequate reserves to get started on a number of projects, but they also are dependent on ongoing funding, which we have a lot of grant applications out, and we're waiting to hear back from. And we are looking at other sources of funding as federal and provincial programs roll out. So, we did come through a very rough patch with staffing and council issues that occupied pretty much all of our attention for a couple of years that shouldn't have. Those problems have been fixed now, and we're ready to get to work. Thank you.
Thanks, Leah. Brian?
Yeah, thanks for the question again, Tanya. Yeah, I would have to say yes. I will push for projects to get done sooner. A lot of the delays are, of course, funding and permitting and making sure we get the job done right. Anybody who knows me, I'm kind of impatient. I like getting the job done and getting it done quickly, but doing it right. From what I understand, there's a lot of grant money out there, and I think we should all, as a council and CAO do our best to track down as much money as you can get for these projects. Yeah, so that's all I have.
Thank you, Brian. Thanks, Brian. Margaret?
Yes, thanks so much. Thanks, Tanya. From walking around town, the kind of things like the campground, the sidewalks, the snow plowing, the lights, all of these very visible issues in town were mentioned to me. Interestingly enough, the infrastructure that is happening, the safety of the town, the water mains, all the other issues that you don't see were not mentioned. And I think that draws attention to the fact that people do want to see progress. They want to see that their issues are being addressed. They want to know when those issues are going to be addressed. And I think that we could increase the opportunities for the public to interface with council and to bring up their concerns, and for council to present what the priorities are for the year, for the month, and where council is and the villages in addressing those priorities. Not all priorities get met, but I think when people understand the whole picture and what the council is working towards and the resources they are working with, they may have more tolerance for timelines. And so that would be my goal, is to increase opportunities to hear from people what are their main concerns, because they certainly are what is visible in the town from my understanding of talking to people.
Thank you. That concludes the written questions. Jay, I'm just doing a test here because I didn't get a chance before. Am I going to be able to walk around in front of here? We'll find out. Okay, everybody hold your ears just a second. Okay, I'm just checking this right now. Yes, one of you lucky people has just won $100,000. Okay, from the village of Slocan Trust Fund. No, look under your seats and see if you have the magic number. I just wanted to check this because now for open mic questions, we have a really good mic system here. I'll just walk around. If anyone has any questions, if you just raise your hand, we'll try and get to as many of your questions as possible. Okay. And this gentleman over here, who I have met before, and actually we know each other for a long time. If I could ask everyone as you speak, just to give your name for those of you who might not know us, and go ahead and ask your question, and we'll have people answer them. Again, you can ask a particular person, a particular candidate, or address your question to all the candidates. Okay.
Yeah, my question is for Leah Main, and there's a bit of a Don Broughton, yes. Now, when John Everett was mayor, you tried to close Water Street. I told you couldn't because that was the only access to the lots at the end of it. You said council still had things to look into, and I said it would be nice to have a council who looked into things before voting on it. When Kathy Provan was mayor, we wrote.
Excuse me just a minute, Don. Okay, if you could just preface your question with a sentence or two like that, and then get to the question so that they have a chance to answer.
I'm getting to it, but people need to understand where it comes from.
Okay, we understand. We don't have time for everybody to go into the background though. Okay, so we understand. Try and be as brief as possible.
I'm trying. Being interrupted won't help. When the next mayor was there, we wrote about our concerns about the trees in the campground. You said no more trees would be cut down. Dozens of trees were cut down to facilitate more campsites and better access to campers. None of the trees that threatened us were touched. This is also when the dishonesty about the fence.
Okay, excuse me, Don. Okay, what your question is?
You got to give me a minute, Gary.
I have actually given you over a minute, Don. Okay, if we could get to the question, just in the interest of getting the candidates' answer, we want to hear from the candidates.
Yeah, I do too. But first, people need to know.
Excuse me, Don. I can't do this. Okay, you have to get to the question. Please do.
Leah Main, there was one tree that threatened your life and you wanted it cut down. Why is your life more important than anybody else in this town? Because those trees in the campground threatened hundreds of people every year and threatened our lives and almost took.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Don. And actually, I appreciate the question. Okay. That's to the point. Okay. It might not be in the taste we all want, but it's to the point. Okay, Leah?
The factual basis of your question is incorrect. And I make decisions as part of a council of 4 people and a mayor. I don't go into the village office and say, this is what I want done, and this is how I want it done. I am part of a team, and we all take mutual responsibility for the decisions that have been made.
Okay, thank you. Your question.
Stuart Nelson. To Tanya's thing about enforcing bylaws and all that, is there any way, not only as a council, but even us residents, I think it's if we could be a thorn in the, I know private property is private property, but be a thorn in the property owner of the old Silverton Hotel. I think something with today's visitors here wanting services, whether it's a meal or a place to stay, that owner down there is obviously, I think if I was to go in there, I could find lots of things that are non-conforming and just be a pain in the ass that to him so much that he will sell it.
Thank you. As I heard it say, you have questions of all of council, if there's something can be done with the Silverton Hotel property without contravening any laws. Okay. Got it?
Yeah.
Okay, and we'll start with Margaret.
I would love to have somewhere to go, somewhere for a beer, somewhere to have a meal. I've heard stories that the Silverton Hotel was quite a vibrant place with a band and music. That would be fantastic, but I really don't know how you can go, you know, beyond, as you say, the limits of private property. Again, I suppose it comes down to enforcement of any infractions of health and safety at the hotel and how those are identified. And it's a frustrating process. I've heard it from quite a few people. So I don't know, Stuart, I have to say, I'm not familiar with what is possible there. Yeah.
Okay, thank you for your answer. Brian?
Yeah, it is a frustrating process. Stu, I asked the question myself when I first got in. I even suggested, you know, I have some friends who would like to purchase that place if it ever did come up. And yeah, everybody wants it open here. I think a brainstorming session amongst council members and the public, maybe we can come up with some solution, but I always got to that point where it's private property. Not much I can do. Yeah, but I agree with you.
Okay, I'm going to move on to let the next person answer. I think if we have time at the end of this meeting, the candidates may be able to stick around for a few minutes too, and we can follow up on some of this stuff. They'd be happy to do that. Leah?
Council, successive councils and current council have done everything that we can within the limits of the law. We did in open session apply a notice on title on the property. So he can't even sell it without the purchasers being notified of the deficiencies and contraventions. There's nothing more we can do. We could offer to buy it, but he won't sell it. So other than, we have done everything we can. And if anybody has any great ideas of other things we can try, I'd love to hear them because I agree. It is a crying shame that that sits there and crumbles and the community does not get the enjoyment of that gathering place that used to be. Thanks for the question, Stuart.
Thanks, Clarence.
Just two things. One, I wonder when we have questions from the audience, if we might, if the order of how we answer it might be like we can have an option there, because in this case, Colin and Leah both would know more of the history of that particular property. And then we'll get the history before we get. Yeah, it doesn't matter. No, I know it doesn't matter in this case, but it's happened a couple times here where I thought, oh, it's too bad
Oh.
that didn't go to Leah first, because there's lots of history that she knows that none of us do.
Thank you for that. And just to interject, because the question was to me, I'm reluctant to do that. Not that it doesn't make sense, but because this is a candidates meeting, I'm reluctant to refer to senior people, okay, or the mayor, unless the mayor wants to speak to it.
Okay.
Because it's really for the candidates to answer. If this is a regular meeting, that's the way it would be done. Okay.
Well, I can tell you this about that property. He, the owner, is the reason that Colin and I are sitting here today. Because at the by-election, we'd heard that he'd taken out papers to run for either mayor or councillor. And yeah, believe it or not. And, you know, some of us have an idea of what their associations are, and that's kind of a scary prospect, thinking of that outfit or anybody close to them being on, you know, on village council. So somebody came to me and told me about that. And I said, well, if dude is running for mayor and nobody else is, well, I'm going to, I'd make a really shitty mayor. And I was stressing over that, but I thought, if I have to be mayor to make sure this guy doesn't, I'll do it. And I asked Colin if he would be mayor, and I told him what I knew or what I'd heard, and begged him to be mayor. And he said, well, if you run for council, I'll be mayor. So here we are. And there is some history there, and I know that the village is doing everything in its power to deal with that, but none of it seems to be making a lot of progress. But yeah, I wish that could change too.
Okay. Thank you for your answer. Arlene, you've been following this?
Yes, I have. Maybe as a community with interest in that property, we should invite him to a community meeting and ask if we could buy it.
Short and
He
sweet,
can only say no.
to the point.
He could only say no, but he does have some issues against some people that are on council. So that is my only answer, is to invite him to a community meeting and ask him what we can do to let us have this property.
Okay. Thank you for your response. Any more questions from the floor? No, going once, going twice? Okay, we'll go over this way.
Yeah, there you go. Derek Hicks. I got a question about a rumor I've heard about the fiber optic that the village is thinking about borrowing money against to put in towards people's houses for expansion and stuff. I'm just wondering where you guys are at with that.
Okay, for fiber optics, this has to do with that last mile. Okay, I think Colin, did you want to say something to start with?
Sure. Yeah, I think I'm the chief perpetrator of the dream of last mile. Having tried to organize the entire valley to build, own, staff, and run the last mile. The village at this point has no plans to borrow money to do this. One of the things that precipitated this recent surge in interest in the organization was that there's funding available. UBF funding, universal broadband funding, comes from the province and from the federal government. $830 million is being made available. We think, we don't know exactly how much. It goes up and down, and we don't know exactly when. But the funding window actually has opened up. So our plan was to try and apply for funding for this The project right now it's on hold, partly because there is a window, so there's no immediate urgency. We have a few months to make any move. Also, we just have so many things in the village now that we need to take care of on an urgent basis. So working with our new CEO, we're trying to prioritize those things. But the plan basically was, we've been given the opportunity to build out the last mile, and we thought, well, what would that look like? How can we do it? We want to make it future proof, which means that, 10, 15 years from now, it will still be viable. In the cities now, they're talking about 5G, but in the next 15, 20 years, it's going to be 10G. We know that. So we just wanted to make sure that we were in a position to try and overcome the urban-rural divide, as it's called, where, people in rural areas don't have good internet access, and it's eminently possible to do it, but it hasn't been the interest of the telcos to do it up until this point. So that's what it was all about, but we are not planning to borrow any money at the moment to do it, and we might not actually borrow any money at all to do it. It's very much a dream at this point. It's an important dream, I think, and one that we have to keep alive. But at the moment, it's definitely on the back burner. But we would bring it to the community too. This is not something that we would do without a great deal of communication with everyone concerned. So, yeah.
Okay, so that's what the mayor says. Of course, when he says we, he doesn't know who we is going to be after October 15th. But that certainly gives us some valuable background on what's going on. The question to the candidates is, do you feel that's a priority, and how would you fit that in? And I'll go to Arlene first.
Sorry, I'm trying to work and do this at the same time. A priority for the internet is funny because I just had a request from TELUS to do a survey on my internet service that I have at home. They want to know if I like it or if it needs improvement. So they got a very bad survey from me because it is our right to have high-speed internet. And I feel that we are all being held hostage by TELUS because they could, through all the years and all the money that they have, should be providing everybody with high-speed internet.
Thanks, Arlene. Clarence?
I think in the simplest terms, and that's the only way I understand it, like that's as deep as it goes. I'm definitely a big proponent of fiber optic. We can do a pilot project for $0. I mean, maybe Silverton Building Supplies would put in some money. There's free materials kicking around in Caslow. We could do a pilot project, get it up and running in the core in the central business district of Silverton, say Memorial Hall and across the road to Hand and Soul and over to Silverton Building Supplies at no cost to the village. And it would be absolutely incredible to see that done. Silverton Building Supplies needs it badly. We're hanging by a thread with our internet capacity there. And that's certainly not going to improve. And the other thing is what Arlene said, and that is that we, like Caslow, we could run our own fiber optic system here, manage it ourselves, install it ourselves, and instead of sending $100, everybody's sending $40 or $60, $100 a month out of the community. We keep it in the community. We hire people locally. We have the expertise. It's incredible how much expertise there is right here in Silverton and area. We can do it. We can keep the money here, and we can have internet speeds that would blow our minds, all of us.
Thanks, Clarence. Leah?
High-speed internet is now considered to be a utility in most communities throughout Canada. The big telcos serve the cities, and they have no particular interest in serving rural areas because of the financial bottom line. We're fortunate to have Columbia Basin Broadband Corporation that has laid the backbone of fiber optic throughout the valley. And now we have to come up with the solution for getting that fiber to every single home and business and taxable property in the entire valley. The mayor and Councillor Denbok have both been quite active in trying to craft a solution to this, and I've been working with them. I am absolutely in favor of having fiber to every single home and business. How we get it and how we cost it out and how we pay for it is going to be grants, 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 and grants. Only borrow money for it if we absolutely have to, but there's a business case for doing it without having to borrow money. Thanks.
Thank you. Brian?
Yeah, Mayor Ferguson has been working tirelessly. I know that, working very hard on this project. I go on record, and I have gone on record in favor of a pilot project for the fiber. As far as a priority, our hospital is a priority. That's where I am. And as your emergency management rep, that's where my focus is. High-speed internet, great, and keep the dream alive, go for it. But I think our priorities are the hospital.
Thank you. Margaret?
Thanks very much. As others have said, it would appear that the kind of fiber optic high-speed internet that we're talking about has become part of our infrastructure needs. And councils do borrow money for infrastructure. It sounds as if that isn't being considered here. I think that as anything that happens in the village, it's a matter of consultation, costing out the project, considering the value to the community, then evaluating the value of that service to the community in an open and transparent way, so that people don't feel that money is being spent on one thing at the expense of another. And as Brian said, healthcare, it's hard to argue that healthcare isn't a major priority in this community, but I don't think that excludes attention to and moving forward on this last mile project.
Thank you. And thanks for your question, Derek. Next question. I recognize you, sir, from a few days ago.
Well, nobody from Silverton's going to ask a question, so I'll do one. Vern from New Denver. The village of Silverton and New Denver have been exactly the same distance apart for 100 and something years. We're currently experiencing the same issues for staffing, justification to buy equipment, and trying to develop services on a reasonable scale that we can all afford. So my question is to all the fellow councillors up there that, should you be elected, would you like to speak, with a committee between Village of New Denver and the Village of Silverton to try to create some economies of scale for a lot of our services?
Okay, thank you. And of course, Vern is one of our counselors in New Denver, so I certainly understand the question. Margaret?
Thanks, Vern. Yeah, you're right. We do have the same infrastructure issues, maybe on a different scale, but the roads, the waterworks, the basic services that make this a safe and healthy place to live and are the same in New Denver and Silverton. And economies of scale. I mean, we already are communicating between the municipalities up and down the Slocan Valley. And if that can be made stronger, more efficient, more cost effective, why not? I can't see any barrier to that. And I think we're already moving in that direction and doing that in different areas.
Thank you, Brian.
Yep, I'm 100% in favor of a stronger relationship between our council and New Denver's current council, or whoever may get elected. That's for sure. Big ticket items like for our village, of course, I'd be interested in seeing if we can go halfers on those sort of things, the trucks, garbage trucks, etc. So yeah, and basically teaming up going after keeping our school, well, our schools, but our hospitals open. Yep, for sure.
Thanks. Leah?
Thanks for the question, Vern. Yeah, I think it makes absolute sense for us to talk about and tease out what equipment, what personnel resources we could share without either of the villages suffering a deficit of availability as needed. But there are many ways that we can do bulk buying, share resources, share skills, and share equipment. It's certainly demonstrated by our shared fire service that we participate in the New Denver and area fire service. There's definitely room for a shared garbage truck or some sort of facility like that. So there are places where we could collaborate, work closely together, and there are other places where we still will have to maintain separate infrastructures and separate support systems. It would be good to know exactly which are the ones that we could work together on and which are the ones that we're going to have to do bulk buying and share the costs on. Thanks.
Thank you. Clarence?
Yep, 100% agreed, Vern. If there's ways we can have efficiencies by sharing services, we should look into that. I definitely feel for Viv, who's sitting there, of course, with her mind thinking, oh my God, this is another giant portfolio for me to take on. But that's definitely something that our village should pursue with New Denver. I feel like that. And if, everybody else does, then off we go. We'll give Viv a new job.
Thank you. Arlene?
Yes, I totally agree. We already do our fire services with New Denver, and it would be beneficial to share other things with them as well as garbage, anything that would help in our costs of doing business.
Thank you very much for that. Next question? Question, okay, okay, and I'll give you your question. Then we have two people that they've asked one before. Anyone who hasn't asked a question yet, who's really shy and would like to speak right now in public, introducing yourself. Sure, go ahead.
Hi, Peter Yakachuk. Question for existing council. Over the past term, what decisions did council make that made a positive impact in the community? And for the upcoming council, what decisions do you want to make positive impact in the next term?
Thank you. Question has to do with impactful policies. Arlene, you're first on this one.
Well, I think our policies with our communities, like our societies that are working, like the music we had this summer at the gallery was wonderful. I think that was a bonus. Everyone's been talking about it. Oh, Silverton's really coming up there. I think our hanging basket program was good, and if in the future we could do more with Communities in Bloom, or just do it on our own. And upcoming, I think we need to work a lot on our water system to make sure we have the water that we're going to need, because it is the most important thing that we own. And the assets of our buildings, we need to upgrade our buildings because they're beginning to look a little sad. We need to get that going.
Thanks, Clarence. Talking about impactful policies.
I think the most important things that have happened in council have been sort of intangibles. I bring this up every time, but for me, that's been the most important thing. We've got ourselves sorted in a way that we now have, I feel like we have staffing in a place where we can go full speed ahead. And we've got council in a way that we're working together. Those haven't been voting decisions, but they've been a lot of hard work, and they've set us up to get cracking and doing things. Certainly one of the things that I think has been of course, some of the easiest decisions were budget decisions. It's just standard procedure. We look at everything that needs to be done and make budget decisions. Pretty straightforward, nothing earth shattering, but it's just doing business. I don't think there's been anything really earth shattering. We're just plodding along, going through the steps we need to do to keep things running. Looking at, as Arlene mentioned, looking at the assets we have and their longevity and what needs to be done to either repair them or replace them and so on. Just standard business, plugging away every day. And for the future, same thing. Just keep plodding away at the work that needs to be done. Nothing really outstanding.
Thank you. Leah?
Interesting question. Thanks, Pete. Aside from surviving a pandemic, we also survived a highly dysfunctional council and staff. And it took us a lot of hard work, a lot of process, a lot of really tough decisions to wend our way through that and finally come to a place where we have a functional council and a functional staff, and we have taken advantage of the opportunity to look at and clearly define what the roles are of council, of councillors, of staff, of how staff works and works with council. And now we're ready to open that up and start working more closely with the residents of the town. We don't have to be looking inside quite so much like a dysfunctional family that's constantly protecting itself. We're ready to do the work. I have particular interest in Silverton Creek and in protecting our watershed so that we have good, drinkable, unchlorinated water forever. We have a lot of work to do on other bits of our infrastructure, asset management, which is a way of codifying how we deal with all of our facilities, all of our equipment. And those are big jobs. I'm ready to do them. Thanks.
Thank you. Brian?
Yeah, so I've been in office as a councillor for 6 months now. And with this council's blessing and the mayor's blessing, I've gone after some funds through the Columbia Basin Trust, through the Community Readiness Program. That itself is to upgrade this hall. I'm going for a backup generator, a heat pump, and replace some of the siding. And that being said, that the whole reason for that is provide cooling center for the residents and surrounding area and heating as well. And I look forward to possible housing projects, replacing the water line. This council's got some traction. So, you know, if we're not all together, hopefully the new council takes over, but I think it's going to be exciting times. As long as there's money out there to get. And we're going for it. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. Margaret?
Hi, I guess I fall into the new potential council member. There's a few things that I would like to see if I am elected. And those, I'd like to start with a greater use of public forums so that we're sure that we don't miss individuals or groups that aren't normally heard or are perhaps unsure about how to voice their concerns. So some regular consultation with people to inform council's decisions and direction. I'd like to see a really strong consultation with the volunteer groups and advisory groups in Silverton so that we don't have time restrictions on them talking to council about their concerns and their projects so that we can maximize the use of resources that council has to work with them to because clearly they are a huge benefit to Silverton like they are to every community. I'd like to see perhaps a monthly report, a short update by council, perhaps a message from council in the Valley Voice or on the Silverton site that kind of summarizes some of the things that are happening that month, the direction for the next month, or perhaps for the year. So just more of a discussion amongst council and people in the community that isn't time restricted as it is in a council meeting.
Thank you very much for that, and hope that gave you some information that you were looking for. Okay, we have two other people have other questions. Anybody with a question for the first time? Okay, well then I'll go back in the order. Stuart? You're more of it's a statement. Okay. Sounds good. Those of you who have statements, if there's a press right here with Jan, okay, after the meeting and the candidates too. And I smile when I say that, but it's really true. So I'm sure you'll take advantage of that. A second question here, Derek.
Derek Hicks again here, just quick and simple. I'm just curious to see whether the council or not would prefer fiber internet or replacing the old water line that was put in 1950, that there's still 3 sections that need to be replaced. I would like to see which one you guys would prefer to do first. I mean, money aside, totally different, just to see where you guys would stand, whether you want new fiber or to replace the aging water system in the village.
Okay, there's a hypothetical question for council. From past experience, I'm curious to see what they're going to say too. I do know hypothetical questions are very hard to answer, but that's fair enough to ask them, okay? And we'll see what they have to say. Okay, if you had to make a choice, if you want to answer this question, okay, Margaret?
Sure. Okay, I'm going to go to my response to a previous question, which is, I don't think things are either or. We can't work on one thing and exclude working on everything else. So I think both are very valuable. And as I said, I think fiber optics have become almost an infrastructure. Water lines are an infrastructure. So I don't think we necessarily have to compete on those issues. We have to find a way to manage those needs within the resources available to the people in Silverton with our tax base, with the grants. I just think that we need to work on both of those issues in a realistic way within the budget, addressing, as you said, which is the priority in terms of health and safety, or which is the priority. You know, I know that they prioritize streets, water mains. There's a whole list of priorities for work in the village. So again, I go back to the idea that perhaps we need to have more public engagement to talk about exactly what these issues are. Why are we working on fiber optics and not so much on the 1950 water mains? But I think we need to work together on it, not see that one group's interests are forefronted at the expense of other groups' interests, because all people's interests are important. So if we can find a way to work cooperatively to make people feel like they're heard and that their particular interests are being listened to.
Thank you. Thank you, Brian.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with A. Was A replacement of the water line? I'm gonna go with that one first. Yeah, I think obviously replacement of the water line is priority with the public works as we speak. Yep.
Thanks. Leah?
Okay, simultaneous, but water first. However, we don't really have to make that either or choice, just as different staff members have different skills, talents, and abilities that they bring to the table. It's the same with council, and one portion of council can be working on bringing, moving forward through staff on the water line. Another couple of people on council can be investigating the possibilities of doing our fiber optic to the home. So I think we can be working on both, but boy, I sure wouldn't want to be without water. Thanks for the question, Derek.
Thank you. Clarence?
I'm guessing Derek knows that nobody's going to choose fiber optic over keeping our water mains intact. So hands down, water main, of course, absolutely, of course, and the other stuff will come along too. But water main is super, super important, and it is high priority, top of the list right now.
And Arlene?
Yes, I agree. Our water is our number one, but we can probably work on both, but water is definitely number one.
Your worship.
Yeah, if I can just weigh in very quickly, I agree with everything that my colleagues have said. We can do both, but they don't know this, and they will soon. That yesterday, my new CEO stared me down across the table and said, last mile is important, but water comes first. So just that's
Right.
the law has been laid down on that already.
Thank you very much. And yeah, one more question here, Don.
Okay, I will be brief, I promise. For the last 2 years, our footbridge here has been falling apart. The surface on it is crumbling and falling into the creek. The whole thing is causing the boards to break apart and is dangerous and has been for 2 years. What will council members, or when will they get to it? And how important do you folks think that the safety of people in the town is? Is it important enough to fix things when they're dangerous, such as the sidewalks, or do we leave them for 20 years like the sidewalks?
Thank you for your question. Arlene, we'll go with you first. Okay, what are your plans for repairing that bridge, and how important is the safety of the community? And,
Well,
and that
the-
infrastructure, is that right, Don? Yeah, okay, yeah, Arlene?
Okay, yes, the bridge is important. We have many people that use that as a daily walk around town. And yes, it should be fixed and fixed properly so it is safe. And yes, our sidewalks are another issue because they are not safe.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Clarence?
Yep, agreed 100%, needs attention. And it's on the docket for sure. I don't know when exactly, I really don't know. Yep, okay.
Okay, so at least I partially said.
I can't imagine that that's very satisfying, Don, but I'll commit to at least asking that question in council again, just to get us, if I can get a more specific answer. I'll commit to you to try to answer that personally.
Thank you. Leah?
One of the really fun things that a new council gets to do is to sit down and look at all the things that need to be done and start establishing priorities for them. Safety obviously is a high priority. And in regards to the footbridge, it was inspected, it was looked at. Public Works has been monitoring it. It is not dripping any matter into the creek. There is a screen underneath it that catches anything that does fall off the surface of the footbridge. So new council, whether I'm on it or not, will take a look at all of those things that need to be done. Thank you.
Thanks. Brian?
Yeah, health and safety is always number one in my decision making, especially my position, and for every citizen here and all our visitors. The only safety concern that was voiced to me while I was canvassing was the entrance of the footbridge on either side during winter months and when it could be iced up. They suggested putting sand there, some salt, and I brought that to council. I know, as Leah mentioned, the footbridge did get inspected recently, and I haven't heard that there's any issues. And that's where I stand, but just keep on looking, seeing if there's an issue.
Thank you. Margaret?
Thank you. I think that it is important that people bring their concerns about issues like safety, as Donnie mentioned, to council. And certainly if I was elected, I would be listening to those individual concerns. They may not be a concern to everybody in Silverton, but they're obviously very important to some people. And the footbridge is a real example of that. I heard a lot about, just individual concerns that people have, and the footbridge is one of them. And if we hear from people in the community that they have a concern, we have to take that seriously. So I appreciate the question.
All right, thank you. Other questions you have from the candidates?
Hi, I'm Vince. As a non-resident for nearly 10 years, I just returned in the spring, and I use the waters mostly in the summer. And the last 2 years, it's been, to me, looks like it's been very busy. All along the lake, boats, boards, paddle boards. How do you foresee it in the future being addressed? Because this volume of boaters, this volume of activity on the water is going to create some issues at some point, bringing any kinds of unwanted beast in the lake and fuel. And I fish a lot and I pick up crap all the time and it's coming from boats. How do you see it being managed or see it as a problem in the growing years? Because this year particularly has been very busy.
Okay, thank you. We know that's a hard one because there's different jurisdictions involved in this, but your question is what can council do? And Margaret, we'll start with you. Well, I don't, it's up to you, shall we?
Oh, my goodness, pollution on the lake. I mean, that is a serious issue. And I think, again, we need to take something as serious as you suggest, which is debris, threats to safety on the water or on the shore seriously. The council is here to represent your interests, even if it isn't our jurisdiction. We listen to you. We've tried to get the source of the problem and the source of the solution. So I appreciate something as important to all of us as that lake, which is really the center of this community. So the health of that lake is pretty important. So thanks very much. And again, having the forum to bring that concern forward is really important.
Thanks, Brian.
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm on the lake all the time myself. I haven't noticed too much this summer, but of course, when we see something floating around, we pick it up and put it in the trash. So I think this issue calls for a bigger discussion for sure to see what we can do as far as the village is concerned and council.
Thanks. Leah?
Thank you. Great question, Vince. I swore I wasn't going to say great question, but there I just said it. This is an issue that we have to work with our surrounding partners on because it's not, Silverton can do whatever Silverton wants to do. It will not affect the lake. But if we work with Slocan and New Denver and Area H, we can have an impact, and we would have to work also with provincial and federal agencies and representatives. The regional district has recently formed a Slocan River and Slocan Lake working group to start looking at these questions, and Silverton does have representation on that. It was Brian and I was the alternate as the regional district director, and these questions are top of everybody's mind when we look at where we live and how we want to protect it. We have to work together in order to do that. So I think that work will be proceeding in the next term of council and regional district. And I'll keep you in the loop on that as much as I can if I'm still on council.
Thank you. Clarence?
I was on the board of the Slocan Lake Stewardship Society for 5 or 6 years, sort of in their early years, must be 10 years ago now. And of course, the lake is jurisdiction of Ministry of Transportation. But one of the things we can do, and we did then, was we had that Imagine Slocan Lake survey. I don't know if you folks remember that we made a pretty big deal out of. It was a big formal survey. We managed to get grants, about $50,000-$60,000 in grants, and did a big formal survey. Got an amazing response from all the communities around the lake. And a lot of consensus on a lot of the issues, which was really awesome to see. And one of the big ones, the outstanding messages, was keep slope from all demographics. People have been here for a long time. People have been here for only recently. And it was generally, in the broadest terms, keep it as it is, which is really awesome that we were able to get that kind of consensus. I think we would get that again from communities all around the lake. And one of the biggest things, I think, has got to be just keeping a frigging fuel marina off the lake. Whatever Slocan does, I can't imagine they would even contemplate putting a fuel marina on the lake. But if there's the beginning of trouble in Slocan Lake, that will be it. So if we can advocate and work with interjurisdictionally with Slocan, with the other communities, and all try to stay on the same page, that's the best we can do.
Thank you. Arlene?
Yes, we need to make sure we keep our lake clean. My son-in-law lives down in Delta, and I sent him pictures of our lake, and he said, You can actually see to the bottom, all the rocks, fish. It's like the most important thing that we have in this area to keep clean is our lake.
Thank you. We have time for one more question before we do wrap up. Anybody? Okay, Don, you've got it.
Councillor Main, you mentioned screening under the bridge. Would you commit to having a meeting with me at the bridge either tomorrow or next week, anywhere from Tuesday to Friday, and show me what's been done to help that bridge and keep pollution from falling in the creek?
That question to Councillor Candidate Main, would you be willing to meet with Don next
Thank
week
you.
over this?
No, I will not meet with you because our previous meetings have ended in you speaking extremely disrespectfully and aggressively and abusively to me. You can speak with staff and they will show you what has been done and what is being done to protect the creek from the deterioration of the covering of that bridge.
Okay. And on that note, ladies and gentlemen, I have to say, as your moderator, that this was a fun meeting, and it was really good. Folks in Silverton are pretty outspoken compared to some other folks, and kind of get to the point. I hopefully you got the questions asked that you wanted to ask. You've learned something perhaps about the candidates you didn't know before, and that would be good too. And the candidates have heard some questions of what's important to the people who are here tonight. And yet, I think we'll probably all walk out of here feeling fairly good about the community and the future. You've just acclaimed Colin Ferguson as your mayor. You've got 6 very good candidates, I think. For council, unfortunately, you can only vote for up to 4 of them. It's not quite like the old Chicago days where they said vote early, vote often. And, just remember October 5th is advanced polling day. October 15th is regular voting day. So keep those dates in mind, and you have some good candidates to choose from. We're going to finish up here with giving each candidate, starting with Arlene, and going down the table this way, have 3 minutes to make their final statements based on what they've heard tonight and what they would like to say. And there'll be a few minutes left over at the end where I'm sure the candidates could talk to you individually, or you could ask further questions of them, at least for a few minutes. Okay. And again, thank you. Arlene, you have 3 minutes for your final statements.
Okay. Thank you all for coming and listening to and giving us all these questions to answer. I guess my main concern for our little town of Silverton is get the community more involved with what we're doing. So I would encourage everybody to come out as much as possible to any of our meetings. When we have our official community plan, all come out so we know what everybody would want. It's very important to have community involvement. If we don't, it doesn't work. So I would be really happy to see more and more of our community come out to our meetings. Thank you very much and have a nice evening.
Thank you. That was Arlene Yofonoff, your candidate for council. Speaking next, Clarence Denbok.
Yeah, thank you too very much for everybody coming out. It's really been a pleasure. I wish we could do this more often, seriously, but maybe it's because it's such a controlled format that certainly helps keep a lid on things. And that's awesome. It's all about process and respect for process. And I really super appreciate that. A couple little, not really points of business, but things I wanted to step out of line a bit. Viv, can I introduce you? I guess I have now, right? Would you please stand up? This is our new CAO, Viv Toss. Thanks, Viv. Apologies if, whatever, that was uncomfortable for you. Another thing I want to do is also acknowledge the work that Colin Ferguson has done here. I can't even begin to describe how much work he's done. He had no idea what he was getting into. And it's been an awful lot of work. It's been a full-time job for him. I'm sure maybe even more than that. He just got back from a weekend with Leah at the UBCM, Union of BC Municipalities. Did I get that right? And that's just the beginning of it. His work on the fiber optic, his work on coming into council the way it was super, super stressful. Colin, I just have to say thank you. And I just wish everybody could appreciate how much work you've done. I'm so glad you're back. And I wish if I could, I would. I'm voting for a raise. Can we have a vote? Another thing is, I will personally, Peter and Johanna, where are you? Commit to looking at that speeding thing. I'll get on that and I'll chase it down. I'll do whatever I can. I'll try to keep council's interest on it. I'll talk to our CMP. If there's other jurisdictions I can talk to, I'll do it all. I'll personally take that one on. I haven't taken on a lot of committee work just because I'm super, I'm just preoccupied with a lot of other stuff. But that particular one, I will do. I understand it's a concern for all of us. And when I see kids playing out in front of the store and in front of the general store and anywhere, it's just an accident waiting to happen. And I'll take that one on for sure. Yeah, so thank you everyone again.
Your candidate for council, Clarence Denbok. Thank you, Clarence. And Leah Main.
Thank you. Silverton has been my home for over 40 years. I'm deeply in love with the town and with the community. It takes a team. Council is a team. As a councillor since 2009, I have worked consistently to maintain and improve our water system, to repair and improve our community buildings, to support both downtown and home-based businesses, to bring high-speed internet to Silverton and the Slocan Valley, to join and support the Rural Health Network, and to meet with local committees to respond to our local health service challenges, to protect the village financial assets. We are debt-free right now. About 8 years ago, I initiated Quartet, which resulted in collaborations. As an example, our joint application for wildfire fuel mitigation around all 3 villages. I advocate strongly for recognition and reconciliation with Indigenous nations and peoples within and around our community. As our representative at Regional District, I work with our regional partners on transfer station and landfills, recycling and composting programs, and the annual household hazardous waste roundup. I also sit on the Regional Hospital Board, Transit Committee, Parks, Trails, and Recreation Commissions, as well as the Slocan Valley Economic Development Partnership. And as an elected director on the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, where I'm the chair of the BC caucus, I'm privileged and grateful to advocate and negotiate with the federal government on behalf of local governments throughout Canada to secure funding for infrastructure, housing, transit, disaster mitigation, and more. I have the time and passion to attend meetings on all these local, regional, and national issues. And I'm grateful to the community that has trusted me to represent our needs, challenges, and strengths for the last 13 years. I certainly hope that you will vote for me to serve another 4 years. If you don't vote for me, just do vote. Thank you.
Leah Main, candidate for council. And speaking next, Brian Mills. Brian?
Well, that's gonna be hard to follow. I got about that much written down.
You have different skills and
So, yeah, thank you all for your time. Thanks to the Valley Voice, Chamber of Commerce, and Gary for moderating tonight. Yeah. I'd like to thank those who've chosen to run as well, and those who have served with the last 6 months. It's been my pleasure, and I've learned a lot, and I'll continue to learn if I'm reelected. It's an honor to be your guys' counselor. I put a little side note here, and I actually wrote side note. It's a selfish feel-good thing for me. I've had a lot of important email addresses in my industry in mining and, you know, RCP and et cetera, but I'll tell you, the best email address I've got is brianmills@silverton.ca. It's a great honor. That's pretty cool. Thank you all. Have a good evening and drive safe.
Candidate for council, Brian Mills. Thanks, Brian. Margaret?
Great, thanks so much. And obviously, I don't have a record of accomplishments yet. So I am just going to briefly talk about my principles and values as a potential council person. I just want to say that Silverton is a diverse community, and like all communities, it's the job of the elected representatives to represent all citizen interests at the local, provincial, and national level. And it's important to be accountable for that representation to the members of the community. Local government is the most accessible and responsive level of government. Municipal councils and regional boards are local citizens elected by the community, and local government staff are community members. Together with citizen, volunteer, and advisory groups, local government is you, me, and our neighbors. It's a community effort. The local government provides and maintains the community's basic essential services, which we've talked about: clean water, garbage collection, roads, sidewalks, street lights, fire and police protection. Our local government shapes our community through the policies and land use planning, and local government responds to the community's needs and plans for the future. I just want to finally say that according to the Working Group on Responsible Government in BC, the 4 key foundational principles of responsible conduct for elected officials in municipal government are integrity, accountability, respect, leadership, and collaboration. These are also the key principles of conduct that have informed my personal and professional life. I believe that my record of commitment to the communities, institutions, and associations which I've been associated with will stand me in good stead in serving the needs and aspirations of the people of Silverton. I value the relationships I have with each of the current council members and welcome developing strong and positive relationships with new members and with all my neighbors in the village.
Your candidate for council, Margaret Scaia. Thank you, Margaret. Also, again, I would remind you that through certainly no fault of her own, your other candidate for council, Luce, Paquin, is still in the air as far as we know. And we'll be landing somewhere soon, and we'll be back here. So you still have a week or so before the early preliminary elections to speak to her or any of the other candidates. So Mayor Ferguson, do you have any closing remarks you'd like to make?
I could make a few. My wife's not here, so I can actually talk. Oh, she is. Oh, that's all I have to say. I just wanted to emphasize some of the things that were said tonight. First of all, you know, Councillor Denbok basically talked about planting seeds. It's been a bit of a rocky past few months, but what we have worked very hard to do is to plant seeds for the future. So there are very few things that were mentioned tonight that haven't come across the council table and been discussed. We haven't had a chance to get into a lot of them in depth, but as my other colleague says here, they're on the docket. The things I heard, the water main, I mentioned that's going to be a happening thing. And it actually is currently underway. I know our CEO is actually working on this, not as we speak because she's taken an hour off to come here, but she was working on it all day, and I know she'll be working on it all day tomorrow and perhaps even the weekend. Just saying. Exactly, it's not paid by the hour. The other thing is that the hotel was mentioned, and Stuart, it's a real tough thing. There have been discussions about the hotel. It's complicated. We do have that covenant on the title at the moment, but it's not going to be easy to fix that. Council absolutely knows that thing could be a gem. It could be the heart, the pulse of the village and the surrounding area, and indeed it once was. So that's not being ignored. Creek Bridge, basically the whole thing needs to be replaced. We know that, we talked about it. So we'll be taking a collection as you leave. Probably $50,000 or $60,000 would do that. Actually, no, I think $156,000. So again, a lot of the things that were in the discussion tonight, it's just a question of money. I'm not sure if everyone knows that the village doesn't raise any money. Like, we don't make any money here with, I mean, like, we all pay taxes. It's diddly squat in the budget line. We survive on grants. So that's really where the money comes from. So for things like sidewalks, the boulevards and the main street, not looking great. We talked about it, we know. Narrowing the main street, something that Margaret Scaia talked about, or was it Arlene? We've had some discussions with the RCMP about this. If you can visually narrow the street, if the street looks narrower, it slows traffic down. And there are various ways you can do. You can plant some trees. You can put flower baskets or various things along the edge of the road. There's lots of things you can do to make this main street look narrower. All of that takes time, it takes planning, and of course it all takes money to do, but it's all being discussed. It's all on the docket, as it were. The speed thing we talked about, we know all about that. Speed bumps are a really good idea. That came up tonight. That one of the things that I learned in my first few months on council was that, you know, the council has this much of desire and we have this much staff. So we had come up with great ideas. We can come up with them just without even a beer or a glass of wine. We can throw those ideas on the table. But we only have so much staff. We only have so much money. And we have to fit this much ambition into this much reality. The volume of activity on the lake, I think that Councillor Main talked about the work the RD is doing. You know, there is a growing awareness everywhere and in all of us that we live in a finite world. It's taken us a while to get to realize that. You know, I remember going into an earth sciences class at university and the professor throws up this, you know, that famous picture of the earth in space, you know, standing just glowing in the dark. And he said, you know, this is a closed system. Everything that's ever been in it is still in it. And apart from a few asteroids, there's nothing entering either. It's a closed system. So it's like the goldfish in the bowl. I used to teach social studies and we used to talk about this, and I'd say to the kids, do you ever watch goldfish in the bowl and they're swimming around, this big string of poo hanging out there, you know, and they say, hey, and I'd say, yeah, where does it go? There's no place for it to go. So, we are learning that this is a closed system and we have to make a lot of changes, and they're going to be very difficult changes. So the lake we're blessed to have a lake like this. It is so pure, pristine. But as we know, there's a lot of pressures on it. So we are aware of that, and there's work being done, and hopefully that work will increase as time goes on. The thing with the internet, it's a complex subject. It's complicated. It's not complex. It's actually very simple, but it's a complicated subject. And I've been thrashing my brains out since April on this thing. There's so much that can be benefited from it, but it'll take some time to achieve, and there will be communication. So stay tuned. This is not Netflix. We're way beyond Netflix with this stuff. It's way more important to the future health and economy of this area. than just, better Netflix, but we're working on it and we'll come back to it. Communication was mentioned a couple of times, and there has been talk about communication in council, increasing communication. We have plans to do that. It would have been done way before now, except for COVID. We thought about it. We made plans to do it, and then COVID hit a year ago, and it's like, so we've been working on it again and again, but we don't want to create a super spreader, which is why we've been on again, off again, on again, off again, because what we'd like to do is bring everyone together, if possible, so we can have, a big kind of town hall, foofara, and just talk about everything, talk about the village, talk about the future, and move on from there. But it is coming. We're working on that, and we're actually building a new website, and hopefully we'll have a portal on that where we can communicate backwards, a two-way portal, so we can communicate backwards and forwards with everyone. It's very important. So other than saying it has been a terrific pleasure for me to work with everyone at the table and on the phone. I wish them all the very best of luck. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Colin. Okay, that wraps it up for us here. Again, meet your candidates for council. I think we meet most of them every day in our daily lives, and that's the wonderful thing about living in an area like this. You've got a good slate of candidates. You've got a great community. So I wish you all the best in the election coming up. Remember, October 5th, October 15th. Thank you to the Valley Voice and the Chamber of Commerce for sponsoring this. Jay for the sound. Thank you very much. And for all of you for being here and for your interest in your government. Good evening, everybody.